Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PC Gamer Show for May 15th, 2019. Still brining. E3's coming up, at which point we will resume the grind. With me today, Wes Fenlon, features editor at PCGamer.com.
Hello, James.
You doing all right?
Yeah, video games.
Right on.
I played some.
You did. Well, good, because that's what the show is about, and that's what we're going to talk about for the next hour and a half, approximately. Jarred Walton, you're one of our
Howdy,
senior
guys.
hardware editors. How you doing?
Doing good.
Yeah?
Just testing CPUs, graphics cards, and writing about CPU problems.
And playing games, right?
Yes, I played some
And by
games. I played some Jupiter Hell. I played some
ooh,
Rage 2.
and by play Rage 2, you mean you ran it through a benchmark probably
Well,
a couple
I was
hundred
just telling you guys
times.
earlier, I've got 33 hours in the game. I think 25 of that is benchmarks.
Wowza. Right on.
Feel for me.
That's
Did you
the life
did you
of a
benchmark
hardware
the
editor.
shotgun, Jared? Did you benchmark the shotgun?
That matters.
I used the shotgun.
It's a pretty darn good shotgun. I'll
It
say
is.
that. I'll say that.
Good feedback.
And we'll talk all about that in a few. Yeah, today we got a good show. We're talking Rage 2. Our review is up. I finished it. Jared, did you say you finished it?
I have not finished it.
Okay.
I've been doing a lot of side quests
Right.
because I read the guides that say don't do the main mission first.
Yes. Don't do the campaign first because it's a short one. We're going to talk all about Rage 2. Jared, you're going to kind of give us sort of a survey about hardware on the horizon, right?
Yep.
Some exciting stuff, some scary stuff. What's your take?
It's both, right? So Computex is coming and E3, and AMD is expected to announce new CPUs and graphics cards. I don't know what NVIDIA's got planned necessarily. And then on the CPU side for Intel, they'll have ninth gen stuff, nothing really faster than the 9900K. But there's some bad news for Intel that came out yesterday
Yeah.
where they released more information about vulnerabilities, side channel
Hooray.
exploits.
Good stuff. Great fun. Love to see it. Plenty more hardware talk coming up. And we're going to wrap with our E3 predictions. E3 is happening in less than a month now, June 11th through the 13th.
Dear God.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about things we expect to see, what we think the biggest surprise will be, sort of what we're worried about or not anticipating, and our Hail Mary dream announcements. I love it. I love doing the E3 predictions every year. It's almost like our, I don't know, a holiday for the industry, even though we all work way more than you would on a holiday.
I feel like that's PAX maybe. Is a little
Yeah,
more.
yeah, it's better. But it's still exciting stuff. So we'll be talking about that. But before we do, let's talk about our highlights of the week. And our highlights of the week are anything we played, saw, read, experienced related to PC gaming that we think is worth sharing. And why don't we start with let's start with Wes this week.
All right. Well, I'm gonna do two highlights this week.
Hell yeah.
One is there's a new Oddworld game, Oddworld Soulstorm,
The hell?
which I wrote a thing about for the site. So this was actually announced like 2.5 years ago, something like that. They said, "Hey, we're making this," and that was it. And we basically didn't see anything else from it for that time. I got to go check it out about a month ago, kind of see where it is in development. It's coming out like early next year. And it's a remake of Oddworld Exodus, which was Abe's Exodus, which was the second game back on the PS1.
Right.
But this is way more of a like full-on complete reimagining of that game than New and Tasty was, which is the remake of the first one they put out a few years ago. That was basically the original Abe's Odyssey, but with like nice new graphics and stuff. But they didn't really change up the way it played that much. But Soulstorm adds in like a lot of new systems to the game that the original didn't have. And from what I saw, it looks pretty rad. You're going to be able to get a lot of items from enemies and from like vending machines and stuff. It has a whole consumerism, theme running through it. But you'll get items that you then combine and craft in interesting ways and use those to solve puzzles. And it seems like most of the puzzles are going to be pretty open-ended. Like it's not going to be you have to do this one specific solution to a puzzle. It's how do you use this whole arsenal of tools to solve it the way you want to, quietly or loudly or violently.
Cool.
So for what I saw,
Microtransactions.
that looks pretty good.
What's that,
Solve
Jared?
it with microtransactions.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just buy your
No,
way through.
no microtransactions, but probably a
That's
little
good.
commentary on microtransactions.
For sure.
Yeah,
That's good.
it's definitely not crafting in the like survival game sense. But
Yeah.
anyway, that looks pretty cool.
Okay.
My other highlight for the week is I finally got back into playing some Monster Hunter World for the first time in like probably 2-3 months, because they're running the spring event right now, and they just brought in a few weeks ago the like high tier, the hard mode version of this one special event called Kulv Taroth, which is this giant golden dragon that you fight in like a raid with a group of people while other people are also doing the fight. And your progress and their progress like intermingles to how difficult the fight ends up being. And this hard mode version has like some of the best weapon loot drops that exist in the game right now. So it's all like RNG whether you're going to get anything good out of it.
Mm.
But there are some really good weapons in there. And so a friend and I played a whole bunch over the weekend, and on our like first run, he got like 3 of the best weapons in a drop, and I got jack shit. And then in our second run,
It's the Monster
I
Hunter
got like
experience.
I got like 2 of the best weapons, and he got like jack shit. So it all balanced out.
Oh, good.
But I now
Good.
have a sweet new longsword, and I'm learning how to use longsword, which I had not really played through the main game with. And he got some cool stuff too. So it's been a good
Cool.
time.
Yeah, good time to get back into it, I guess, because we saw the trailer for. Phone. We saw the trailer for
Iceborne.
Iceborne at, gosh, it was a Sony event, or at least like stream. And I think after the fact we got word that it's going to be a delayed release on PC again. At least it says winter is our.
Yeah, which isn't too bad because
Yeah.
they said September for consoles on that stream, and they didn't even mention PC in that
Mm-hmm.
trailer. So I was like, oh shit, are we gonna have to wait like 6 months
Mm-hmm.
for it? But then Capcom did their own stream right after that, and they said we're targeting winter for it. So it might only be like 3 months later that.
But winter could be like January, February too.
Jared, shh, no,
We gotta hope. We gotta hope. And that
it
looks
could be.
cool. It's a pretty cool
You're right.
trailer. So I'm happy. I'm happy to have an excuse to kill more things in big fantastic worlds. Sweet. Thanks for the highlights, Wes. Jared, what's your highlight?
I played Jupiter Hell. So like
What is Jupiter Hell?
Jupiter Hell is the unofficial sequel to Doom the
What?
roguelike. So like back in 2002, someone took Doom and turned it into a free open source top down kind of low res graphics
Hmm.
take on Rogue, where you're running around and you're shooting, all the regular Doom stuff. So Jupiter Hell basically totally updates that to modern graphics, 3D top down, pretty cool lighting and graphics actually, but it's still turn-based roguelike gameplay. So you're wandering around one step at a time and fighting off evil demons. So I started playing that last week, and I played, I don't know, I probably played 10 times and kept on dying around level 8, level 9. And then a patch came out which must have made easy mode actually easy.
Mm-hmm.
Because for the first time I found red armor. So they've got green, blue, and red armor. Red armor is obviously the best. So I found red armor like 3 times in a run, which I'd never seen before. Got rocket launcher and some other good weapons, and eventually even beat the final boss, which I didn't realize was the final boss. I was just fighting this guy. All of a sudden I killed him, and like it kind of presents the screen as like an old CRT view.
Great.
It's sort of nifty. It's got like a warped effect on the screen. Um, so anyway, it like kind of fuzzes to static and says disconnected. I'm like, wait, what? And then it pulls up like your like final run stats. Congratulations, you won against all odds, kind of thing. So I'm like, well, that maybe was a little too easy on easy mode, but it was cool to play through it. And I'm like a big fan of Rogue and games like that. So you can just take it one step at a time and not worry about getting mobbed if you step away for a minute. So
I love Doom's malleability of like, let's just turn this into a completely different game. Like that's
Yeah, I mean, Space Marines against demons, like it's awesome.
It's
Like, what can go
versatile.
wrong?
I mean, like one of
Versatile.
my favorite Doom games, actually, I don't know if it was exclusive to this device, but I played it on my Motorola Razr flip phone way back when. Was it just called Doom RPG? And it was a lot like,
was this official or like a fan game?
it was official because I think unless there was some, I don't remember the state of licensing in these stores, but it was Doom, um, in the vein of Legend of Grimrock and that style of square by square first
A
person.
dungeon crawler,
Yeah,
Doom.
dungeon crawler Doom.
Jesus.
And it was great. I remember loving it. I don't know if it would articulate very well on like a PC, but on a mobile device where you're just pressing four directions and killing cacodemons and all the same monsters with the same graphics, just in a more bite-sized, slightly very different format.
That's so much cooler than the bad Tetris port I was playing on my phone.
Oh my god, there were some awful
lagged
ones.
every time I like
Those
fucking
Tetris
turned the
phone
pieces
games,
over.
before smartphones, they were bad.
Yeah, there's some. I kind of miss the days of those early mobile games where they were just all trash. They're pretty trash now, but
Even though that's not technically a PC game, James, I think you need to do a retrospective
maybe I
on
should. Oh, I
Doom,
absolutely should.
Doom the Razr phone game.
I'll make a note. Right on, Jared. Is that it for your highlights?
That's mostly my highlights. I've also played a ton of Rage 2. Well, I benchmarked a ton of Rage 2, so we'll
Cool.
talk about that
Yeah,
later.
yeah.
But
Right
I
on.
mean, it's cool. Like, I played through the original Rage again 3 weeks ago just because I was like, hey, it's coming out. I forget what the story was, and there's a reason I forgot.
It's
It's
pretty
pretty
bad.
forgettable.
Yeah,
Uh,
pretty thin.
so I was like, I played through it. I was like, that was kind of an all right game, but where's the final wrap up conclusion? And it sounds like that's more of the same with Rage 2. So
Yeah, yeah. What a roller coaster that game is. Cool. Well, I'll just run through my highlights. Two of them for you. Two of them for you. One's an old game, one's a new game. So I don't know why, but for whatever reason, I like over the weekend I realized I had not played through Batman Arkham Knight, and I loved those first two games, Rocksteady's Batman games. And I said, "Ah, what the fuck? I'll give it a go." And I remember why I didn't play is because it was one of the worst ports in like recent memory.
so bad it got pulled and then
Yeah,
put back,
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And put back and like better, but not too
not
much.
fixed.
Yeah.
Not perfect. And it was actually like one of the first thing, like when I first started a PC Gamer, I remember that being a thing, like what I walked into the office and everyone was talking about and doing around that time. And it was, I don't know, it was sort of a landmark thing for me personally. And also just, in terms of like bad ports, I feel like after that, you really didn't see as many. WB Games still doesn't have, the Mortal Kombat games and don't have a great history with ports and such. But I think overall, PC ports are in a way better state than they were back in the Arkham Knight days. And it was fascinating on that level because it runs and looks amazing now.
It just took like 2 generations of
Yeah.
hardware surpassing
Yeah, what kind of
it.
graphics card are you using these days?
Well, and I also have I'm running a 2080, so it's like it's easy peasy. Even if so, I can't really compare it to what was I using before 980. I can't say it would have worked well or not on that card, but right now it looks great, and it's nice to be able to play this game. It's not my favorite in the series by a long shot. I think they really they have these two amazing games that set up this relationship with the Joker in a pretty cool way, and then Arkham Knight does something extra with it, even though you think he's no longer in the picture. But then it's just a very rote comic book story that takes I don't know, 30 hours to get through. I'm still not done, but I'm enjoying it like on a purely mechanical level and thematic level. Just being Batman is still very cool. The world is amazing and gritty, and it's very it's reminiscent to me of the animated series, or at least like what I imagined a real life Batman would look like, or a cleaner version of Tim Burton aesthetic. and uh, the combat is still like untouchable, and the stealth is still very playful and fun. So it's doing the trick, even if the story is blasé.
I remember the thing that really turned me off was the everything I read and heard about the vehicle segments just sounded like super fucking boring.
That's
Yeah,
like Rage
The
2.
the tank or whatever.
they're not great. And I mean, they would be fine as like the occasional interstitial, like, oh, you've been doing the same shit forever, now get in your bat tank. But they just make you do everything you do as Batman, but in a car for a lot of the game. Like, I mean, they introduce tank stealth missions where you have to sneak up behind tanks and distract big tanks with
No
your
thanks.
fucking cannon. Yeah, it's so bad. I got so tired of those. It's fine though. They're like it's still like well put together and fun. It's just there's way too much of that shit. My other highlight is about a game called oh god, let me make sure I don't screw up the name. A Plague Tale Innocence.
Plague.
It's a plague. Yeah, a Plague Tale Innocence. And I thought this.
Why did you say plague?
I have. Listen. It's. Just don't worry about it.
Is it
It's
somebody's name?
Plague.
Is it somebody?
I say plague. I say plague. What?
You're not.
Is it an accent thing? Is it a regional thing? I thought it was oh god, have I just been saying plague? Plague?
I thought that was just a slip of the tongue. Like plague is actually how you pronounce that.
Plague. Yeah, I say plague. Get over it.
That's
Plague.
a Montana thing.
Let's move on.
Anyway, a plague tale innocence. A Plague Tale Innocence is this game kind of came out of nowhere for me. It presents itself. It looks like at a glance something like a PlayStation 4 exclusive, that kind of aesthetic, you know, where there's two characters and one's older and one's younger, and they're walking around together in these very detailed scenes. But this is not one of those. It's on PC. You can get it now. And in it you play as like cool teen Amicia, and she's watching over her little brother Hugo, and they're both orphans on the run from the Inquisition in France during the time of the bubonic plague. And you're running presumably because you have ties to nobility, but Hugo also might be more special than Amicia knows. I personally think he's a little baby, and he's a little baby boy who's scared of rats, a little fear factory who's scared of just cute fluffy animals. But it just so happens that these rats are carrying this aforementioned bubonic plague, and that's represented in a Plague Tale in a really cool way, like a really dope, fucked up way. So wherever there is darkness in this game, there is a writhing mass of rats. That is like the rule that you operate within.
That's kind of like Dishonored.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's kind of close to that, and except like turned up to 1,000. So rats are just like carpeting the floor, bursting out of the ground, and that is what Plague's particular blend of like exploration and stealth mechanics are built around. So like you might have a typical stealth scenario. They're not always present, and especially in the early game because it's trying to teach you how to play the stealth game first. But a typical stealth scenario might include like require you to get across like a small farmstead, and it's being patrolled by a few inquisitors. And Amicia can like hold Hugo's hand, but that slows her down. So there's like a whole companion system there where she can tell him to stay put to move faster, or to like tell him to go crawl through a small hole to open a door, and so on. That stuff kind of expands as you play. There's the usual like crouching in grass and distracting guards with rocks, or you can bop them with your sling. So there's nothing too surprising in that regard. But when you throw in the writhing sea of rats, and it's a dark environment, the usual stealth stuff becomes a bit more complicated and very grotesque and entertaining if you want it to be. So that soldier patrolling that farmstead in the dark, maybe they're carrying a torch, and that like parts the sea of rats at their feet. It's really gross. So you can like try and find your own torch, which will make you visible to the guard, who can then come after you, which is maybe not a good idea. Or you can like use your sling to knock it out of his hand. That also exposes you for a bit and will alert him to your presence. But if you successfully knock it out of his hand, the torch goes out and the rats pile on him and turn him into nothing instantly.
Does he turn into rats?
Essentially, pretty much. There's nothing left after they're done with them. And so later you get more sling tools that let you play with that light and dark relationship a little bit more. Like you can set objects alight from a distance with like this fire sling upgrade, and I'm not like too far into it, so I know there's more. I don't know exactly what that stuff is, but the stealth systems are like it's really fun seeing those. The stealth system.
Is this like top down, or is it?
No, it's a third person adventure kind of game, and so I'm not like hooked on the story yet, but I like the slightly fantastic pretty fantastic interpretation of history. It's not like you're getting fantasy elements, but it's, obviously that's not what the plague looked like. The plague.
I cannot tell. Are you just fucking with me?
I'm literally not. I've been saying plague my whole life. I'm so sorry. Even in chat, Big Pendo, this motherfucker said plague. But God, I'll finish up and get out of your head soon. But Amicia is like has a really like steadfast demeanor. She's tough, and like there's a cool relationship developing with her brother early on, who was like this feeble small child who was like kind of cloistered away from society. They don't really know each other well because of that. So they're getting to know each other in this game. That's like a cool thing to see, and I hope it kind of ties into the actual mechanical relationship you have. It's not particularly difficult yet. Levels are pretty linear, but I think it feels like one of those games that's scaled to fit, like Hellblade, for example. It was built with this scope in mind, like pretty straightforward levels with some cool stealth bits and crazy rat puzzles and a strong narrative component and some macabre stealth stuff to make the journey a little more harrowing and gross and entertaining. So yeah, that's a plague tale innocence. Now you got me worried, Wes. What other words am I fucking up?
I'm sorry. It's just I couldn't.
It's okay.
Couldn't take it.
It's okay. It's not like James was an English teacher in a past life.
Hey, listen. I swear to God, it's got to be a regional thing. Because what's the other word? Tour. People say tour.
Yeah.
I say tour.
Tour.
I'm going on tour.
Tour is like the Onion router network.
I get so much shit.
I would say tour.
Tour.
Yeah.
Tour de France.
I don't put much U in there.
Doom versus Duam.
The 1993 classic Duam.
Let's fucking move on. I can't do this. Let's talk about how angry we are too.
Rage 2.
Rage 2.
Reggae
2. Rage 2 is out, and Jared and I have played a bunch of it. I finished it over the weekend, and I don't know. Just give me Jared. Give me your like one sentence take on how you're feeling about it so far.
Can I ask a question first?
Yes, go for it.
If Rage 1 existed purely for mega textures, so that John Carmack could just make this new technology, Rage 2 exists for blank.
One more time.
That's a tough one.
Can you say it one more time? I literally
was
spacing.
If Rage 1's existence was predicated on John Carmack getting to make mega textures, which I feel like is the only reason they made Rage 1, why does Rage 2 exist?
Oh, I think...
What is its reason for being?
For me, it's the shotgun. But if I'm talking like from the perspective of the development studios, it feels like the first, like getting a template for open world game design into that engine and into those studios. It feels like the first punch of like a template that will be returned to. I think
Mm.
I feel like they need an annual series, one of those like chunky summer brain dead annual series where you like a Far Cry, that you just kind of check things off the map. I think those games are always going to be around because they're
Rage was always so weird because like
yeah
id Software was the multiplayer Doom shooter
yeah
genre company, right? And then all of a sudden it's like Rage was like the original was single player only as well, right?
yes
I'm trying.
yep
Or
Yeah,
did
so
it have a quickly forgotten multiplayer mode that we
I
can't even remember?
I don't
might
think
have
it does, but it could have. I could be mistaken, but certainly wasn't about multiplayer primarily. And so it had this story that was kind of a departure that, it actually made some effort to do a story. I almost kind of wonder, like, was there enough fan requests over the years where they're like, yeah, we should probably go back and revisit that? They probably had like a whole continued story that they were going to work on that they just left behind. And now it's, what is it, like 7 8 years later they finally were like, yeah, we should release that. I mean, it's kind of weird, like,
it.
and it's still no multiplayer, which makes the whole open world thing feel a little weird to me.
It's a very weird game, and it gets weirder because it really opens for me. I expected nothing from this game. Like I played very little of the first. I maybe expected the gunplay to feel like an id game. I expected maybe the car stuff to feel like Mad Max, Avalanche's Mad Max, and that's maybe it. But it just opens with so much momentum that I thought I was in our Slack like, guys, Rage 2 might be like gaudy. It's fucking awesome because it looks amazing. It looks very very good. The shooting is great. It feels like they took Doom 2016 and uh, kind of ran with it. They said, okay, what if you could do the stuff you did in Doom? We have the shotgun. We have sort of you have your typical spread of basic weapons, then some special ones. And what if we just gave you crazy superpowers alongside that? That incentivized switching between weapons and moving a lot and playing with uh, crowd control more. That
I
really
love the
like
slam.
yeah, the slam is amazing. It's like a big Mario butt punch that when you upgrade it, forms a tiny vortex beneath you where you're going to land. So as you rise into the air, it will suck enemies to where you're going to land, and then you'll slam down into them, and giblets will just fly all over. It's fucking amazing.
Do you
It's
like? Is
awesome.
it like a fist slam, or do you actually use your butt?
Uh, well, I think the butt's involved, but
You
it's more
don't
of a
see your
fist.
guy, so you don't know.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
point.
I
Um,
think he drops the hammer.
there's like a literal vortex ability that you can use basically as a rocket jump or uh, so you throw it out, and if enemies are near it, it will suck them all in, black hole style, and then spit them out into the air. Or you can throw it at your feet to rocket jump, and then if you want, chain that into a slam. Or you can get an upgrade that lets you, for some fucking reason, stay in the air, hover in the air as long as you're
Hover.
aiming down your sights. And the more people you kill, if you have a certain upgrade while aiming down the sights in the air, the longer you can stay in the air. And once you run out of that, you can butt slam. Uh, there are other abilities. Gosh, what am I missing, Jared? The dash is amazing. Like I think it's really cool because on the UI, enemies there was always like long distance explosive wielders in a given like outpost that are throwing rockets at you or grenades, and some good indicators will warn you of where those things are on or are approaching from on screen. So you're really incentivized to like use that dash to get in and out of the way or to close the distance, to melee or shotgun someone or get out. It's so active and open ended, especially once you look at those skill trees, Jared. Like I don't know how far you are into them, but
I
some pretty wild stuff.
Yeah, like I haven't unlocked all the abilities yet. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't have vortex and some, but I've fully upgraded like slam and what's the one where you just bash the people.
Force push. I forget what it's called, but it's like push or
and it's like
force
you
or
can
something.
normally do a melee attack, but if you use it's control by default, which was a bad binding.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I
it's bad.
think James and I did it to the middle mouse button.
Mhm.
So you do that with F, and instead of like just kind of a light melee, you do this massive melee attack that smaller enemies just explode.
Yeah, and
and,
the
and
bigger ones
as
will
you
just go
upgrade it,
flying.
people around them get shot through the air too. So, I mean, that's pretty cool. I haven't got all the weapons either. I've just unlocked the like fire starter or something like that, as
Yeah.
well as the missile launcher.
So it all
But
sounds pretty great. What's the catch?
The problem
the
is like,
story is drags.
yeah, yeah. So it opens that way, and if you know you're in your car too. Car combat is a big like
Yeah,
was promised to be a big pillar of this, and so as good as the melee and gunplay is, I was like, okay, car combat's going to go that way. There's probably a lot of really interesting stuff to do in this world, but that's really not the case. The campaign is incredibly short, so
Mm.
I accidentally finished it, and I by the time I finished, like I was like, okay, this can't be the final mission. I think they're setting us up because the game had barely told me to go into some areas of the map. I hadn't even visited like 3/4 of it. Just not that's an exaggeration. Like a third of it, and it's big. And I was like, all right, I haven't been sent there, so there's going to be more missions that push me in these. It's typical design.
And it didn't feel like in the story that you were on the
No,
cusp of just roll
it
credits.
felt like Act Two was coming to a close. I was like, okay, we're going to see who the real threat is here, or some the world state is going to change in a big way, and it just ended. And so I finished the campaign. The way you get fill out your arsenal and get new powers, like powers that I think make the combat good and fun and as good and fun as it can be. Those are all optional. Like I had not finished with like 2 out of the 4 main powers, and like I was missing like 3 guns or something like that. At least like from what I can see in my inventory, and I was like, okay, so now what's left to do? What's left to do is just a lot of the same side activities, and those are very meaty and fun. Like again, clearing outposts, and like there are variations of that mix it up. Like you have to hold a position, or you have to destroy all the fuel tanks, or fend off waves of enemies. That stuff is fun, but as you get overpowered, and you can become extremely overpowered. By the end, I was like, my health was like 120. I had the universal damage bonus was like 50% higher, so I was just melting these big monsters, and outposts were just nothing was a challenge anymore. So it stopped being.
So all the abilities were still fun, but it didn't scale with you enough
No,
to
no, and
be
it
interesting.
feels like it will, because it throws towering mutants at you, like huge towering mutants at you, and that was like the first time that happens. You're like, holy shit, that's amazing! I can't believe I fought that guy off. But then uh, one of those mutants that was giving me trouble, I returned to like an hour or two later with a couple upgrades in hand, and it was done in like 2 seconds. And I was like, okay, that's not balanced very. That's not fun. Like I still wanted it to be challenging. I just wanted to have a little edge. And
Yeah.
yeah, so once you get to a certain point on the normal difficulty, and I truly like recommend starting on hard, because I imagine that would scale better. It just became so mindless to the point where you're not incentivized to be expressive with the combat, and the combat sort of falls out from under. The incentive to do anything cool falls out from underneath the combat system. And beyond that, like Jarred, the car combat and the car controls.
The
Break
cars
it down.
are like I played Mad Max,
Yeah.
and I thought the car combat was great. Like it's very visceral, and you
Yes.
felt like Mad Max, like you're yanking off armor from the guys and wearing them down and trying to eventually blow up the main big bad convoy truck, whatever it was. And so then in Rage 2, like it's none of that. Like your main car, the Phoenix, right? It starts with like a minigun
Mm-hmm.
that just compared to your handheld arsenal, it just feels awful. Like you go into an outpost and you're like holding down the minigun, shooting at these guys who are taking 5 seconds to die with a minigun blasting them. You're like, that was like a one shotgun blast if I hopped out of the car.
Yeah.
Like the authority, what do they call them? The little towers that are protecting
Oh
areas.
yeah. That's another side activity. There's like big turrets guarding
Yeah,
certain
like
areas.
I don't know. I haven't fully upgraded the car, so maybe that gets a little better. But right now, when you're like, you can turn to the side while you're driving to aim sideways with some of the weapons. But the problem is the game keeps on trying to snap you back to the direction you're going.
Mhm.
So it's like you want to kind of circle strafe in the car, but you can't because it keeps on pulling you back facing
Yeah.
forward. And it just, yeah, I
And
don't
the
like regular combat.
the devs who worked on Mad Max worked on this game, right? Avalanche
Yes.
Yeah,
contributed to this game, so that's why people expected like this shit's gonna be really good. This
yeah.
part of it anyway will be really good because they've literally made this before, and it was, yeah. I think Mad Max like was criticized for certain elements of the game, but I think the car combat people thought was pretty rad. So it's kind of a shame that it didn't even live
Yeah.
up to that.
And the depth in gunplay like is not in the car combat. You
Yeah.
you can get a couple new vehicles and find them throughout the world and bring them back to one of the main towns. But as far as like the upgrades your vehicle can get and how complex like vehicle combat is, it's not. It's a
Are there other vehicles that you can upgrade besides the
I
Phoenix?
haven't found any. I think it's
Because
your main
yeah, it's
squeeze.
like your main car, and like you find something else, you're like, oh, this could be cool, and you're like, oh, there's no upgrades or anything.
No, they die pretty easily, so there's no incentive to
Yeah,
really use them.
It kind of sounds like they should have just made it so that you can have like uh, an auto driver, like an AI buddy, hang out with you, and at any moment switch to like popping up out of the sunroof and just
Yeah,
using your much cooler actual arsenal of guns
yeah, because
against the enemies.
it really just boils down to, I mean, the same convoy like convoys are the big like open world activity for cars, and taking on convoys is like, you're working through the back layer of motorcyclists who have these like electric fields between them that'll damage you, and they're trying to maneuver around you and like get you with that. But and then beyond that, you have to like use a special like burst ability to break down their shields. But they all articulate in the same way, and most of the time, like you're using projectiles. Like you're not doing. You either have a minigun, you have like a uh, uh, some bigger machine gun type.
20 millimeter gun.
Is it 20 millimeter? And
I think that's what it said.
and you have lock-on missiles, and then you have
Mortars,
mortars. And
which
mortars
I
are
haven't unlocked.
I unlocked it, and you primarily use them against outposts and stuff. They're not
Yeah,
even for car combat. So it articulates like this: you're driving behind them, and you're pointing the cursor, and you're holding it down, and until they die, for the most part. And you're not doing anything as close to creative or exhilarating, or nothing really pushes you to make yourself uncomfortable or risk your car by finding a new position. Like Mad
the
Max was great because, like you said, Jared, you were like methodically pulling off pieces of armor, and like the way that felt was great as well, and it forced you to really like get out in front to pull off a certain piece, or to pull a driver out, or to really like pick away at these crazy armored vehicles. And here you're just kind of holding down shoot.
holding down the button.
Yeah.
The other thing, so the Phoenix car, also you can regenerate it and repair it once you
Yes.
exit it. And the thing is, correct it. I don't think you can die in the Phoenix car. Like you jump off a cliff, nosedive into the ground, and the Phoenix car is dead, zero health, but you take no damage. So then you hop out and you restore it. So it's like if you're in the vehicular combat with the Phoenix, the worst thing that happens is your car stops moving and you sit there and wait until the enemies leave you alone. Then you hop out and
Yeah.
repair it.
Yeah. It's I don't know. Like it's super lopsided, like a very lopsided game in that way.
Yeah.
And it's disappointing in that regard. Even that said, like I wrote a beginner's guide that sort of like its real purpose is to tell people how to play this to maximize the time spent with its best parts, which is the gunplay. Um, that stuff is very, very entertaining. I played this game almost I faster than any game this year. I was so into it, and it only petered out for me about like 8 hours in. Those first 8 hours were amazing, and then I started seeing the full scope of it and the pace.
And then you were done.
And then I was done, and like I don't regret playing it at all. I think it's weird because I think it's one of the better shooters in like recent months. Like it feels amazing, but it is suffering from a lot of broader design decisions, or just like I don't know. It feels like they ran out of time to really, really flesh out like side quests and the campaign. But what's there is like everything feels pretty good. It looks great, and there's like a lot to enjoy. I think this is the perfect sort of thing to wait for a sale on and like just chew through in a weekend of brain dead FPS fun time. But
Well, it sounds like the combat isn't too brain dead when you're using your actual weapons.
oh
Like,
no,
sounds
yeah,
like
by brain dead I mean it's just like pure. It's just juicy, fun, visceral entertainment. Just like ugh.
you're not real invested in the
No.
story,
No.
in your character motivations.
Yeah, I don't even know
And
what the motives
your
are.
sprint lasts forever, which is great.
Yeah.
Like I get so tired of the games where you sprint for 5 seconds and you're like, oh, now I gotta huff it for a bit. So I love that you move fast and you can upgrade your sprint so you move even faster when you're sprinting. So yeah, like you can get around quickly. I felt
Yep.
like you don't want to run cross country. The cars
Yeah.
are still way faster, but
Even if it gets
the
repetitive, there's
movement
little
feels
time
good.
wasted between activities. So I don't know. It's a weird one. Something I totally recommend and enjoyed personally, but hard to
Tell
fully
me
get
about
behind.
the NPCs, James.
Oh yeah, I want one thing I really love about this game, and let me get these photos up for our viewers. Uh, it has like a NPC name generation system, or they wrote a bunch. I don't really know how it works, but in these small townships, these characters have some of the best post-apocalypse names
Lay 'em on us.
in games. So I'm gonna run through a bunch real quick for you.
Yeah, just about everyone in the towns has a name. Just
Yeah.
like every character, you're like, oh my gosh.
You point at them and you see their name, but I'm going to run through here. Nosebleed Kate, Wafer Thin Jim, Rory Success, Ryan Cockaim, Schoolboy Sweep, Acid Rain, Tim O'Nails, love it,
That's the best one.
Kenneth Alpha, Rackham Manwham, Spunk Bubble. Oh, great one here. Placenta Trickle. Dread Hulk, and that's in all caps, so I imagine it's pronounced Dread Hulk. Also in all caps, Killer Judge. Doffer Flywheel. Mulder Puss. Cooper Mines. Bladaburst. Globus Deltoid. Stench Core. Long Arms. Baba Glass. Terra Waffle Bang. Reverse Engine. Candy Crow. Spartan Vambrace. Glisten Success. Denim Chow. Fab Drumstick. Mike Chinwag. Wimothy Tillits. Miss Lady. Dag Satan. Sticko Chew. Gumball Deuce. Pappy Swift. Angeline Peapot. And my personal favorite, Flitwick McDimbledick. So, at the very least,
I really want to know if these were their God-given birth names or if these are names that they've earned in their time in the wasteland.
who knows? Who knows? I just know they're great. Yeah, so Rage 2, you can read our full review at pcgamer.com/reviews if you want a quicker
You
link.
can also see my benchmarks too. Woo.
Oh, yeah, Jared did a full benchmark, some full benchmarks on that game. How does it fare up? I meant to ask you. Let's get a
So like budget hardware struggles a bit.
Yeah.
If you drop below 30 frames per second, the game slows down. Like
Ooh.
there's like physics or something is tied to 30 frames per second or above. So usually it's not a problem, but if you play like on a GTX 1050, you'll get like 40 to 50 frames per second. And that's at lower quality settings at 1080p. You move up to 1440p and it's like 25 frames per second and then drops to 20 at times, and like everything gets sluggish. So you don't even want to drop anywhere near 30, is my opinion. But most cards will do 30 to 60 pretty easily. Like a 970, a GTX 970 does 1080p medium at 60, 70 frames per second. So totally playable. But if you want to do like 1440p, you're probably going to, if you want 60 frames per second, which I would recommend for the fast pace of action, what was it? You needed like a GTX 1080 or for 1440p, it might have been the 1080 Ti. Let me pull it up here. I got it over
Fairly
here. But,
juicy card.
Yeah, and like 4K Ultra isn't possible on any GPU at 60 frames per second. The 2080 Ti gets like 59, so it's like almost there, but not quite.
Not quite.
And the weird thing is like dropping from ultra quality to low quality. In a lot of games, that will more than double your frame rate.
Mm-hmm.
In Rage 2, it only drops, it improves your frame rate by maybe 50%.
Okay.
The game still looks pretty good, but like it does not scale to low end hardware very well. So
not a great one for the low spec gamer, sadly.
Yeah. Well,
that's probably more fortunate because it'll be on sale.
You can change resolution scaling though.
Ah, right. Like, you can do that too.
I put it on a Intel's integrated graphics at 720p with 50% resolution scaling, so it's actually like 360p. 640 by 360 resolution. It's
how'd that run?
It ran at like 40 frames per second, so like it can be done. But yeah, you don't want to run it on super low end hardware, I don't think.
Talking about it's slowing down under 30 FPS reminds me of my college roommate who tried to play Crysis at ultra settings, which still doesn't perform great on modern hardware. I feel like at the time it ran at about 15 FPS, and I was like, this is hurting my eyes. Like, what are you doing? But he just wanted to like punch the trees in half and watch the amazing physics happen no matter the frame rate. Wasn't worth it.
Yeah. So CPU performance, though, that was the other odd thing. CPU didn't seem to matter hardly at all.
Huh.
Like with an RTX 2080, so a $700 graphics card, at 1080p low, so basically minimum quality, the difference between your fastest i9 9900K, i7 8700K, and your slow i3 8100 is like 10%. Is all. Like, so minimums were worse on the Core i3, but you can definitely play it on an old, like if you have a Core i5 2500X, or 2500K, sorry, that will still work. Ryzen CPUs are basically right in the mix with the Intel CPUs, so your CPU doesn't really matter too much, which is kind of nice, but kind of weird.
Yeah, it's interesting because the 2500K, I feel like for most games these days, it just isn't cutting it anymore. So it's
like
nice
with a high-end GPU at lower quality settings, I'm used to seeing like a 50% bonus to your i7 8700K over like the i3 parts. So this was just like, it really doesn't matter. You can hit 60 to 100 frames per second on just about any CPU.
Cool. Right, and I'll link to that full benchmark in chat for everyone to check out.
I expect you all to read all 3,000 words.
Please do. Jarred writes a book for you every couple of weeks now. Let's move on to the next subject, which is more hardware. Because Jarred, you're kind of give us a survey of what's on the horizon, huh?
So Computex is end of this month over in Taipei, and that's really big show. Like, it used to be called the Motherboard Show.
I think it's actually in early June this year. I think it's like a week later than usual. It's still coming up really soon. But.
Yeah, so I think there's the pre-show stuff is like starts on May 27th, 28th, something like that. But the main show is probably like June 1st or whatever. But yeah, it used to be the Motherboard Show when I worked at Onontek. And so it's like every Asus, Gigabyte, ECS, MSI, whoever was there, and they'd have dozens of new motherboards, and they'd be talking about new chipsets. So those roots are still kind of present. So I think AMD will launch both their Ryzen 3000 CPUs and their new X570 motherboards at the show. Which the big news with the Ryzen 3000 is it will be a 7-nanometer part, meaning it's potentially smaller, uses less power, and they will have 8-core parts as well as 16-core parts on their AM4 platform. And you should be able to, if you've got an X370 or X470, you should be able to upgrade your BIOS and still use the same motherboard with the brand new hottest CPUs from AMD. And this is the Zen 2 architecture. So Ryzen, the first generation was just Zen. Then you had the second generation, which was Zen Plus, but Zen Plus was mostly about improving clock speed. It didn't fundamentally rework anything. Zen 2 is supposed to be a bigger architectural change. So as well as higher clock speeds, we could actually see AMD has a legitimate shot at the CPU performance crown, I think.
Oh,
so
sure.
Jarred, I want to ask, you're going to talk about graphics card stuff as well with AMD's graphics
Yes.
cards, but do you think this is the year for AMD? If there's ever going to be or has been time for in the past few years, is this
Yeah.
year where they really uh not just turn in something respectable? Like Ryzen's been good for sure, but is this the year where they are actually the better buy than Intel in and Nvidia in kind of across the board?
Uh, let me hold off on the graphics side for a sec. I think on the CPU side, we haven't tested Ryzen 3000 yet, but Intel is now 3 years past when they originally hoped to have 10-nanometer processors. They will eventually have, I think, 6 generations of Intel CPUs all made on 14 nanometer, which means they've been sitting on the same relative process for 5-6 years, and it's that is an eternity compared to what it used to be. They
And
went
for our
from
less
being
technical listeners, can you give just the super short version of why smaller is better?
right. Smaller is better because it means you can cram more stuff into a smaller area, usually reduce the power requirements and voltages, and clock speeds can go up. It doesn't always scale perfectly, and the numbers are not the end story. The
Mhm.
numbers are sort of an approximation, but it's still lower is usually better, especially within the same company. So Intel from 22 to 14 nanometer was a big deal. Intel from 14 to 10 or 10 to 7 will be a big deal. Intel 10 versus TSMC 7, which is AMD uses Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturer company TSMC. Their 7 nanometer will probably be a lot like Intel's 10 nanometer when it arrives, but it won't arrive in force until next year on the desktop. So AMD is potentially a full year ahead of process technology, whereas previously AMD was about 3 years behind Intel. So it could actually take the lead, and that's pretty exciting. So on the CPU side, and we could talk about this a little bit more, but there's also all these CPU vulnerabilities that keep on affecting Intel chips. I don't think AMD is immune to those, but the researchers are focusing on Intel chips first, it feels like, because they're a bigger market.
And it feels
And
kind of like Spectre and Meltdown, which were the big vulnerabilities discovered. Was it just last year,
yeah,
year and a half ago or something? Feels like that maybe opened the floodgates. Like people kind
yeah,
of
it
were
totally
like,
did.
what else might be out there? What are the other problems? And as they started digging, they started finding stuff.
Yeah, so yesterday, Intel, along with security researchers released information on a new class of, they're calling them MDS exploits. I don't know that Intel calls them exploits, but it stands for micro architectural data sampling. And
Hmm.
what they're doing is they're using really low level details and features in the CPU to cause it to accidentally divulge information that is supposed to be protected,
Cool.
which on home users it doesn't really matter, but if you're talking about a server in the cloud that's potentially running, imagine something running Amazon stuff side by side with competitors stuff, and
Hmm.
they managed to steal information, that'd be super bad. So it affects the cloud more. But like this is like the fourth or fifth major announcement of security vulnerabilities discovered using what are called side channel attacks,
Hmm.
and most of them have targeted Intel, and it's like, oh yeah, like
So
I don't
Intel's
know.
getting bashed on the vulnerabilities, and AMD looks like this year they may well actually just flat out beat them in the performance area.
Yeah,
And
they could.
tell us a little bit about the
The
motherboards for
graphics.
Ryzen
Oh
3000, because I think one of the really big advantages for AMD for a long time, that, well, it was a perk but not so much of an advantage because their CPUs were behind for so long, but being able to reuse motherboards for a long time, whereas like every time you're going to upgrade Intel CPUs, you're going to get a new motherboard, right?
yeah. So like most Intel usually will give maybe 2 generations on a socket and chipset.
Yeah.
The latest one was really weird because Skylake was LGA 1151, Kaby Lake was 1151, Coffee Lake is 1151, but it's a different 1151. The chips will actually fit, but they won't work. And you could actually destroy your chip if you stuck it in the wrong motherboard.
And that sucks.
Yeah, but and someone actually proved like you could have sort of kind of gotten it working. I don't like they changed the power distribution and some other stuff, but anyway, you had 2 generations. Coffee Lake refresh. So your eighth and ninth gen CPUs, they're on your 300 series chipsets. We expect the next generation desktops whenever they arrive. I don't know that they will move to a new socket and chipset, but they could, and I wouldn't be surprised because that's what Intel does. AMD, meanwhile, Ryzen first gen was 300 series chipsets, socket AM4. Second gen improved a few things if you upgraded to the new chipset. Mostly you got things like AMD Store Me, which was a tiered SSD hard drive storage acceleration technology, made by Enmodus Fuse Drive, if you want to know names. But anyway, it was a free extra if you bought a 400 series chipset motherboard. Otherwise, you could use the same CPUs as well as the new ones in both classes of chipsets. And then the 500 series chipsets are coming out with the new Ryzen 3000. And I don't know how different they're going to be from 400 series, but
Mhm.
they will add official support for PCI Express 4.0, which probably doesn't matter for consumer hardware. Like it could maybe make a difference, but I wouldn't really count on it, except for like not graphics cards, but for other peripherals, because you'll have a faster link to your chipset. So you basically double the bandwidth between your CPU and your chipset, which controls all your USB ports and PCI Express ports and other stuff. So that will be good. But yeah, you'll be able to use the same CPUs on most. I don't think you'll have all AMD motherboards from the first gen will support the latest CPUs, mostly because the low end motherboards, like the budget boards, probably won't be able to handle the 16 core processor. But I think if you got the X370, you'll still be able to use the new
Nice.
latest and greatest CPUs.
Let's talk the graphics cards real quick.
Yeah, so graphics cards may show up at Computex. We don't know, but they will almost definitely show up at E3, which is like the following week. And E3 is a gaming centric show, which is a good place to launch graphics card information. So I kind of think AMD will hold off on it's the next generation graphics card is named Navi, um, but yeah, so Navi is probably launching at E3. It might show up at Computex. It's supposed to be a big architectural change for AMD. It will also be 7 nanometer, just like the CPUs. And the word is that it's going to be RX 3000 um, branding. So you'll have the 3000 series CPUs and the 3000 series motherboard, 3000 series graphics cards. And that will be kind of interesting because then NVIDIA won't have RTX 3000 maybe. They won't go there. I don't know.
I
Or they'll
mean,
just go to
3000's a bigger number than
2000.
2080, so like it must be better, right?
Right. So the big question is, what will Navi have? And like, it will have probably some new features to make it run better. It will probably use less power than the current stuff. But ray tracing is kind of the big question mark. We know the PlayStation 5 or whatever it's called will have ray tracing. The next Xbox will almost certainly have the same ray tracing hardware. That is rumored to be based off of the Navi 20 architecture, which won't come out this year. That's the rumor.
Next gen, basically.
Yeah, so it's like a second series of higher performance Navi will have ray tracing. However, that is all rumors, so we could see ray tracing in Navi 10, which is what's supposed to launch at
Now,
E3.
correct me if I'm wrong, but hasn't a Navi card already come out? That like a
No.
workstation card? It was just they kind of teased it. Was that it?
Possibly.
What was the card that Lisa Su talked about, and then who's the head of AMD, and then the head of Nvidia kind of took a pot shot at it, and she said like,
that
you
wasn't the
you
Radeon
haven't
7?
seen it yet. It might be.
I don't know. I might have missed that.
Mixing them up, but it wasn't too long ago. Maybe earlier this year, maybe late last year. I'm not sure.
So AMD did launch the Radeon 7, which was like, it started as the Radeon Instinct. I can't remember what model number, but that was their high-end professional card.
Okay.
And then it was made on 7 nanometer, and it has 16 gigabytes of HBM2 memory and a terabyte per second of memory bandwidth. And they turned it into the Radeon 7 for $700. But performance is often worse than NVIDIA's $700 RTX 2080. And it doesn't have ray tracing.
You know, I am hardly the executive who gets to, knows what the numbers are and has all kinds of like forward-looking research and stuff. But if it were me positioning these new AMD cards, I feel like I would come out and say this card does not do ray tracing, and that's why it costs $400. Like I would,
right?
Yeah, or like I would be going all in on as much performance as they can get for regular old gaming and not worry about ray tracing right now, because I feel like that's what people have wanted from the recent Nvidia cards. Is like, yeah, if you have $700, $1,000 to spend, you're going to get the super powerful high end one. But a lot of people were waiting for that affordable card that didn't, maybe it can do ray tracing, but it's not going to do it well enough to be like a realistic concern. And the games aren't there yet to use it.
Well, the big problem is like so the ray tracing games we've got right now are Battlefield 5, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Metro Exodus. There's a Korean MMO game. I can't think of its name, sorry. But there's only a handful of games with ray tracing. And the problem is there's no like killer app where you see the game with ray tracing and without, and you go, oh my gosh, that looks like a completely different game. Like Battlefield 5 with ray tracing. When you look at the reflections, it looks better, but it's not like reflections aren't everywhere.
And it's a competitive shooter,
and so you don't want to lose performance. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the shadows with ray tracing do look better, but they're not like so much better that you're like, yeah, I'll take the 50% performance hit or whatever.
You're not like, I am the knight now. I live in these shadows.
I've been playing Metro with it, and it looks nice, but I just hate that it dips my frame rate so hard.
Yeah.
And it is, again, for like a minor gain. If you're looking for it, you'll notice those effects in dark rooms or whatever. But...
And so Metro Exodus uses global illumination ray tracing. So what you'll notice is I just named 3 games that use ray tracing, but one does reflections, one does shadows, one does global illumination. Like they're all different aspects of ray tracing. And the problem is like, I think you need a game that does all 3 of them well at good performance for people to go, wow, that looks incredible. And we can't really do that on the current hardware, even the 2080 Ti at 60 frames per second. So people are, I'll have the fake shadows and the fake reflections and my 60 to 100 frames per second, and I'll be happy. So I think AMD is kind of taking the attitude of like, hey, that's great that you're trying to do ray tracing, and we'll do it next gen, but I don't think they're going to do it on the first generation Navi.
Yeah.
So they could, but I don't think they will. And NVIDIA keeps on asking me like, why don't people like ray tracing? I'm like, because it's not.
Why don't people like these 4 games that they can barely run at a good frame rate?
Yeah, you can run the benchmarks that have it too. Port Royale. So
hooray.
I feel like also they like you say they need that tentpole game, and not only are none of those games using everything for ray tracing, but none of them was a tentpole game with ray tracing at launch. Like Battlefield 5 has probably had the most muted reception of a Battlefield game. Well, I don't know. 4 had its launch issues, but like Battlefield 1, people really liked. Battlefield 5, I feel like kind of just fell flat on its face. Like people aren't super happy with it. And Shadow of the Tomb Raider got the ray tracing like a couple months later, right? It's a single
Well,
player
Single
game.
play.
Shadow of the Tomb Raider launched in September, right?
Something like that,
And the ray tracing came out at GDC.
Yeah,
yeah.
so like irrelevant at that point.
It's
Yeah.
6 months
Practically.
late.
Metro, I think, did launch with it or had it almost immediately.
Yeah,
But
I believe
again,
it did.
that's probably the best case so far, right? But it's
Yeah.
also a single player game that, people aren't going to really be talking about a few months later. So, yeah, they need that game that is going to like make a big impression at launch with that stuff, and they just have not had it so far. They need Cyberpunk is what they need.
Yeah. Like they need a huge Halo game that everyone wants to play, and they want it to be as cool, as nice looking as possible.
Mhm.
And I mean, the thing is we got really good at faking like shadows and lighting and all this stuff to where it's like, well, you get it. It wouldn't fly in a Hollywood movie to try and use rasterization techniques to do like your 3D rendering. They need to do path tracing and ray tracing to get to that level of realism. But for games, like none of the games come close to photorealism, and so we're all like, no, it looks good enough. Like we don't need perfect looking holodeck simulations yet.
Yep, I agree.
Right. That's our hardware update from Jared.
So the best case I think for AMD is they launch a mid-range $250 card that can match the performance of the RTX 2060 without ray tracing, right? So which means it'll still be the same performance in 99% of games, but it will cost 30% less.
All right.
That's
Well,
what I'm
That'd be
hoping.
here's
To
to
see.
hoping.
that'd be a killer.
Thanks for breaking
Killer
it down,
winner.
Jared. I feel like this is the only way I get my hardware news. Is just
They don't want to read my 3,000 word articles. That's why.
go read that stuff. Jared does some great work on the site. Thanks, Jared. But now, a topic for everyone we can all get behind is the big
The
days coming
Electronic
up.
3.
The Electronic 3. What are the three electronics? Or E's, excuse me. The three electronics. Plug, chip, and mouse.
Hair dryer.
Hair dryer. There it is.
Oh, no.
Is it Electronic Entertainment Expo?
That's it.
That's coming up June 11th with I think EA Play, and is the Microsoft event before E3 too. There's a couple events, independent events that are bookending
I think they're on
it.
press conference day, but
Okay.
to be honest, I'm not positive this year.
A couple, yeah, it's gonna be. I feel like it's gonna be slimmer E3 overall, just because some big players. Is Sony's not there this year, which doesn't really usually matter for us. Sometimes we might get one of their announcements on PC, but otherwise, yeah, it's feeling a little slimmer. It's a consumer show now, also, so the public can buy tickets. But that doesn't mean it's not going to be full of surprises. Like for instance, we have the PC gaming show coming up. That's going to be on. Is it that Monday? The Monday of that week, and
I hear there's going to be some PC games there.
yeah, I know very little about what's on the docket, if anything, but it's going to be good. It's going to be good. So pay attention to that. You can go to our website, pcgamer.com, if you want to find out more about who's presenting and what to expect from there. But it's looking good. But let's talk about the show as a whole and sort of what we expect to see, and run through some predictions that involve our best dreams and worst nightmares. And let's start off with one thing. Let's start off simple, like one thing we expect to be there, expect to be announced or shown off that we're feeling good about. Let's start with you, Wes. Let's go through it.
So I put down Halo Infinite gameplay,
Yes.
which I am looking forward to because last year what they showed of Halo Infinite, which they've been working on for I guess like 5 years at this point, is they just showed almost a tech demo for their
Yeah.
new engine. It was like a little trailer, but it was clearly not meant to be. They weren't like, this is a cutscene from the game. It was just like, here's our way of announcing that this game exists, and like, here's Master Chief's helmet and a warthog driving over some very pretty terrain. So I think we'll actually get to see what that game looks like this year, what it's going to actually play like. I'm hoping we get, a 5-minute cut of a level, or a good meaty trailer or something like that. And I
Yeah.
think it's been cooking long enough now that we will see that.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, we have more Microsoft talk coming up, but what other flagship thing? I mean, Gears 5. Is it 5 now? Yeah.
Yeah, Gears 5 they'll probably show a lot
A
from,
lot
because I
of.
bet that's coming out sooner than
I
the
would bet
next
it's
Halo.
fall. Yeah.
Yeah.
But otherwise, they need something like that looking forward thing and something a bit more substantial. I think Halo is going to be that, and I'm so fucking jacked. I love Halo.
Wasteland 3.
Yeah, they might. I mean, they'll probably show something from In Exile.
Yeah.
They'll probably show something from Ninja Theory that they bought.
Yeah, all the studios
They'll
they picked
probably
up.
maybe from Obsidian also.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, they might have
there's
something cooking there.
some stuff that could be coming from those indies, those once indies.
Used
Now,
to be indie.
now
indie.
Microsofties.
I'll just list off mine real quick because I don't have much to say about it. But I wholly expect Ubisoft to show off Watch Dogs 3. I think was it a rumor that got confirmed, or I don't remember exactly that it's going to.
Was that the London thing?
London, yeah, it's set. The next one's supposed to be set in London. And I wouldn't doubt. I feel like it's been 2 years since Watch Dogs 2. I think Assassin's Creed, it's too early for the next one. Far Cry probably a little too early. Whatever else they got going on. I think now is the time to bring Watch Dogs back.
I know Watch Dogs is so based on modern tech, but like, why not like an 80s punk Watch Dogs?
That'd be tight.
Like London punk Watch Dogs seems like it'd be pretty good.
I want a big chunky cell phone, retro future.
Modem dial-up noises.
Let me just hack into this ATM.
30 seconds later. Watch Dogs 3. Jarred, what's yours? What do you expect to see at this show?
I mean, like, I already talked about all the AMD stuff, but I want to see some, like we talked about Rage 2. I want to see Doom Eternal, like more of it. I'm excited, like after playing Rage 2 and feeling the weapons and stuff, I'm like, yeah, Doom Eternal should be there, and it should be good, I hope.
And it seems pretty unlikely that Bethesda is going to be able to talk about Starfield.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe they'll talk about Starfield. Elder Scrolls 6, definitely not. They could be like, we've got 2 pieces of concept art.
We updated the logo.
Yeah.
We made another 10-second video.
I feel like Doom is going to be their marquee game this year.
Definitely. And I'm ready for it because I installed Doom after playing through Rage 2 just to check in on it, Doom 2016, and that game feels amazing. And I'm really excited to see how they evolve that. So yeah, Doom Eternal is a good shout, Jarred. But let's move on to what we think the biggest surprise will be. So these are the things we expect to see. What's going to surprise us? That is also maybe within the realm of possibility.
Oh. I'm going to switch my surprise to the Dream announcement then and swap those.
Okay.
I think if Navi has ray tracing and beats the 2060, it's in the realm of possibility. I don't think it will happen, but if it did and it costs less, that would be pretty shocking and awesome.
Okay.
The big AMD win. That's your
AMD wins on CPUs and GPUs. That'd be pretty sweet.
I'm all for that push pull.
Mine is Resident Evil 3 remake, which apparently Capcom was sort of tweeting out and like putting some little teases that a lot of people were taking to mean Resident Evil 3 remake. So I don't have like a big investment in Resident Evil 3 personally, but I think that would be a surprise that would excite a lot of people. And given how great the Resident Evil 2 remake was, I would have faith in that game being pretty good.
Yeah, and I bet all they show as like a logo or a sound bite or something. But
Just like the nemesis, right? That's all you
yeah,
got to show.
yeah. I mean, on the tail of that, like, it didn't occur to me. Like, we're about, I don't know, at the clip Capcom's working at. I'm wondering if we're gonna get a Resident Evil 8 tease or something like that too. Where does the series go after 7? Because that was a really cool new direction, and I really hope they don't abandon it. Um, as much as I love these remakes, but mine is, well, it's a bit topical because I've been playing through Arkham Knight. I feel like Rocksteady's next game is overdue. I want to know what
Yeah.
the fuck they're doing.
What year did Arkham Knight come out?
I think
2014?
2015. So it's
2015.
it's still been a while. It's they're
4 years is a
yeah,
long time.
assuming that development is going somewhat smoothly. They probably have something to show or announce or tell us. And I'm so curious what the hell they could be working on, whether it's something in the Arkham universe or a new take on Batman or a new take on a different superhero or just like a game we don't expect at all, like an original IP. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I have to say I don't usually get too invested in rumored like, oh, X Studio is working on X
Yeah.
intellectual property thing, but there was this detailed rumor that got shot down that a couple years ago that Rocksteady's next game was like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles version of Batman Arkham, and I was like,
Yo.
please let this
Yo.
be real. This sounds so fucking cool,
Oh my
but
god.
it was not real. But that would be
Bummer.
like an open world, high mobility, amazing combat system based on the original comics, like gritty Ninja Turtles game. Even if it's not gritty, if it's like silly and lighthearted but just has those
Yeah.
the elements that the Arkham games did so well, that would have been phenomenal.
That is
What
a
if
good
Rocksteady
show.
gets like something from Marvel? Wouldn't that be?
I wonder. I don't know.
I
Take it
think
away from Fortnite.
WB owns them, so
Uh,
I'm guessing that's
Oh
not. I
no.
think they own them. I could be wrong there, but I think they own them.
yeah. Yeah.
If so, probably not. But hey, we can dream.
It seems likely that we'll hear something. I don't know. I just feel like we're overdue. It is. We're ready.
If we don't, then something has gone
Yeah.
badly wrong, probably
I'm worried.
in whatever they're
I'm
working on.
worried. And speaking of being worried, I kind of want to know what we expect to see at the show, or not hear about. Maybe there will be a terrible absence, a void. What's our biggest concern going into E3 about existing games or announcements or lack thereof? What about
I'm
you,
gonna say
Wes?
Square Enix's
Mm,
Avengers project,
yeah.
which I feel like it's been several years since they announced that was a thing.
Hmm.
The two of the most successful movies of all time have come out in that span, and not only have we seen and heard, not only do they miss the like tie-in dates, but we've seen and heard nothing from that game.
Yeah.
So I can't be super confident that it is shaping up well if they couldn't make it out in time for Endgame, or at least around the release of Endgame be like, yo, here's a trailer for our cool looking game. It's coming out at the end of the year or something. So if we don't see anything from that game at E3 this year, then I'm skeptical that it's going well.
It's just bonkers we haven't seen a Marvel game. I guess
Yeah.
Spider-Man, Insomniac Spider-Man was great, but like it's
Yeah.
weird that there's been this void of them for almost the
Spider-Man falls into
entire.
that weird like Marvel has split up the properties and rights so many ways, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a
yeah,
Sony game, really.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's never coming to PC. Well,
But yeah, we need a good Avengers game.
it's just so weird to me. I mean, we've had the Arkham series, which is pretty darn great, which I feel like would have incentivized other studios to do that in their own way, even like while the MCU was still kind of gestating or growing. And I don't know, it's just bonkers. Like, and especially bonkers that we've heard that an Avengers game is happening, but have seen nothing about it, even after Endgame. But who knows? Who knows what's going on? For me, I don't really know exactly what worries me about it, but Beyond Good and Evil 2 has been at like, well, it was in development hell and sort of in and out of existence for years, right? And a couple years ago at E3, it was confirmed that it's in development. and they're doing sort of this open development thing, and it's really ambitious and big, and I just think it feels too ambitious, and like maybe they opened, as desperate as we all were to see what was going on with that game, maybe it was revealed too soon because I just can't see. I don't know. I just feel like there's going to be a certain amount of fatigue with this open development cycle, and like Ubisoft bringing it to every E3 and showing like, oh, now we have this ship doing this thing and this system, and I don't know. I just have like a kind of a worried vibe about the scope of it and how early it was rolled out. And I don't know that. I'm kind of thinking we maybe won't hear about it at E3 this year, or maybe for another 2 years or 3 years, and let's sort of walk back that open development thing and just start making it to a scope that makes sense for that kind of project. But I'm just being a cynic. Games are hard. Jared, what are you worried about?
Cyberpunk 2077. No, I I'm the hardware guy. I hardly know games. No, I actually like if I stick with the hardware side since that's really my forte. Like, let's be honest, AMD promised that its Fury cards were going to be awesome, and they used more power and performed worse than NVIDIA's GTX 980 Ti. And then the Vega cards were supposed to like take the crown, and they used more power and
Mm-hmm.
performed worse than a GTX 1080 Ti, and actually worse than the GTX 1080, which was already a year old at the time. So, like, what's the worst that happens with Navi? It comes out and it's like a mid-range $250 card that basically performs about the same as the current $250 Nvidia cards, and that would be super disappointing, especially since they've got 7 nanometer and Nvidia doesn't. But like, I worry that will happen. I hope it doesn't happen, but it's after 3 generations of this, I'm concerned.
Yeah, and hopefully, at least if it does happen, they can position it in a way that is appealing
It
to
will
a
be
certain.
affordable.
Yeah, yeah. But I would also be a little bummed if that was the case. We'll see, I guess. Yeah.
Yep.
And we're running low on time, so let's close out these E3 announcements and show with our dreamiest announcements, like the best case scenario, very unlikely, or the stuff that we just can't quite fall asleep at night, because we're just dreaming of like the perfect gaming universe. Metroid Prime is back, and the world is at peace. Um, what?
I'll go. But this is not. You've now played it up so much that I feel like this is
I know.
inadequate.
Mine's not even that ambitious, so
I
don't worry
should have
about
I
it.
should have come up with like a game that I want to actually exist, but I think it's I think it's inevitable that at some point From Software is going to do a release a remaster of Demon Souls, which
Mm-hmm.
was a PS3 only game, and like Bloodborne, it was developed in some degree of collaboration. I don't really know how much with Sony Studios Japan
Mm-hmm.
or whatever that studio is called, but I think it's not crazy to picture From Software basically buying the rights to that game back from Sony, and when they remaster it, putting it out on PC, on Xbox, on PS4. And so I would love to see Demon Souls show up on the PC because I never played it back in the day, and I would rather play a nice remastered version that runs well on my
Yep,
PC.
I'm with you. Uh, it feels within the realm of possibility. What the hell's coming to PC that I thought was going to be on PlayStation? The Quantic Dreams, is that the name of the studio? David Cage's
Oh
studio.
yeah, yeah, like the Android and Heavy
Yeah,
Rain.
not great games, but um,
Our
and
games have themes.
and I, they have feelings and emotions. I don't know what degree, like what kind of hand Sony had in that, but I feel like there was some hand that company had in those games, and they are coming to PC, and maybe there's a light enough touch on Demon Souls, like you're saying, that it's a possible thing. I mean, back to the MCU, like Sony owns the rights to Spider-Man, right? But did a call
In the
out
movies,
because it
yeah.
made sense. It would make them money, and I'm wondering if there's a hungry PC audience, and maybe Sony goes, man, make some money, just sign that over, make a PC port. Anyway, Jared, what's your dream announcement for the show?
It can go either way. One, Nvidia shows up with a 7 nanometer G of their own. That would be
Shocks
pretty
everybody.
shocking. Yeah, they're like, hey, guess what? We came out with our second generation of RTX. We've doubled the ray tracing performance so that now you can actually enable it in all the games and not take a performance hit. That would be pretty awesome. The other would be if Intel shows up with 10th generation desktop CPUs built on 10 nanometer. That would their Ice Lake is their code name. But if that happened, I'd be pretty shocked and amazed. But no, I don't think either one's happened. I'm just
You're gonna
dreaming.
undercut yourself immediately.
Yes, Cannon Lake gets revived.
Ooh.
All right, James, what do you got?
Ooh. Mine's also not that ambitious and feels like inevitable. Now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, my real one is close to yours. Well, two of them, and they're not PC games. But Metroid Prime is a thing that's happening again. But they lied, and it's actually ready, and it's coming out tomorrow. The other one is Bloodborne is also coming to PC because it runs like shit on the PlayStation. And Bloodborne 2 is coming to PC too, and Bloodborne 3 and 4. But my real dream is that Microsoft extends their Game Pass library of Xbox and Xbox 360 games to the PC. And that is like, they announce it, and you can get them now. You can get like Skate 3 and a bunch of, stuff that they've prepped for the announcement, and just go play them.
I think it's within the realm of possibility, and it would be really freaking cool because they have been killing it with the emulation stuff, and like something that Sony I think has totally dropped the ball on, or just hasn't really put much effort into trying. They brought back like a few PS2 games that you can buy like fancy HD emulated ports of for PS4, but the Xbox approach to just keep adding backwards compatibility to those older games has been phenomenal, and especially the ones where they have been able to get them to run 4K 60 on like the Xbox One X, like Ninja Gaiden Black. Oh my god, it's so glorious. And if they can make those emulators work on PC, which seems plausible given the architecture.
Yeah, like they're basically Intel and either AMD, or the original Xbox was a NVIDIA graphics card, but I think the others were AMD graphics cards. So, like, it shouldn't be that hard.
Yeah,
they should do it.
So
if it can run on Xbox One, I feel like it can run on the PC.
Yeah, it's basically a PC anyway. So hopefully, I feel like that's a thing that's very likely and a dream. So a good one to end on. We maybe have time for one question here in our Q&A, but we're running long because we just have so much good stuff to talk about these days. And I'll ask it real quick. This one comes from PC Gamer Club member Verandil. Plague. Who are your favorite sidekicks in gaming? Not just any old companion, but a clear top subordinate / best friend to the protagonist. And to give some examples here, Johnny Gat, I think that's Saints Row, fuck me. Sully from Uncharted, Tails from Sonic, Luigi to Mario, and so on. So I'll let you guys think about that for a second, but I have an answer, and it's also topically appropriate. But Chum Bucket from the Avalanche's Mad Max game is very, very cool as a sidekick. Chum Bucket is your on-demand mechanic who just hangs out in the back of your car, and he's just like he's a hunched over, very malnutrition person, and a religious zealot that basically worships my car. And he wants to complete the magnum opus at any cost, and the magnum opus is this car. And he's a lunatic that says wild shit as you play all the time. He's like a little commenter, and he's just a pretty faithful companion otherwise. So, and I just love that you don't just drive this big hulking car around. You have this little man like clambering over the top, and like trying to piece it back together as it falls apart. It's a really, really nice touch. Yeah. You guys have any?
I gotta go Garrus.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's so many great characters in the Mass Effect series. I don't know if Garrus is even my favorite of all the companions,
Mhm.
but I feel like he's the one who is. If I think, is there a side? Do I have a sidekick from Mass Effect? It's Garrus, because he's
Yep.
there with you every step of the way, and I feel like your characters really like that relationship. They especially bring in the third game and kind of close off for you, and feels like the satisfying arc that you were in it together the whole time. So Garrus he's the man.
Good pick. Jared?
Go for the eyes, Boo! Gotta go with Minsk and his space hamster Boo from Baldur's Gate 2. Actually,
Baldur's
was this
Gate.
Baldur's Gate 2? What did I say?
You said Baldur's Gate. I was just
Baldur's Gate 2, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Not a lot of my companions stand out to me, but I remember at the time, like, just loved Minsk. Like, he was the one guy you could not leave him out of your party because he said funny stuff. There was also a thief guy that was chaotic evil or chaotic neutral that was good to have. But Boo and Minsk, gotta have them.
Cool. Good choices all around. That's going to do it for the PC Gamer show today, though. We're out of time. Thanks for joining me, Wes and Jared. It's always fun to talk to you, too. You can catch the show every week, unless I'm not here, which is true for next week. I'm going to be gone and visiting family. My brother got a puppy, and so I got a plane ticket to go see it. Just kidding. I got a plane ticket before he got the puppy, but now I get to go see a puppy. So I won't be here next week. There will probably be a stream anyway at 1 p.m. Pacific time here at twitch.tv/PCGamer. There's going to be an even bigger show in June during the week of E3, the PC Gaming Show. Just change the ing to, or the ER to an ing on this channel. So stick to it. It's going to be some crazy, crazy announcements. It's going to be really cool and very entertaining. I think, have we announced who's hosting it yet?
Day 9 and Frankie are back this year. Do you believe?
Yeah. And they do an excellent job. So at the very least, it'll be entertaining because those two
better
are fun.
than us.
Yeah, for sure. But until next week, don't forget to, what, Wes?
I think Jared should have to say
Jared, don't forget
Jared,
to...
Do you know what to say?
Subscribe? I don't know.
Oh, my God. I got to send a memo out. Don't forget to game on.
Oh,
Game on, Jared.
Game on,
Game
Jared.
on.
All right.
Benchmark on.
Benchmark on. See y'all later.
Bench on, bros.